Welcome, everybody, to Navigating Change, the podcast from Teibel Inc. I'm Pete Wright, and I am here with handsome Howard Teibel.
No, you look better today.
I don't.
You really do. Did you get a haircut?
All of them.
Oh my God, I may have stumped you.
No, that was good. That was like my go-to fifth grade joke. I haven't actually used it in a while, but it's there.
All right, you seem like you had a pause there, right? I caught you.
You don't need to worry about that because I'm going to edit it out. It'll be so smooth.
That's right. God. All right, never mind. Can't swear on these podcasts.
How are you, Howard? Tell me about we had. I'm going to pull back the curtain. We had stacked up a couple of episodes because you had some travel, and so we haven't talked in several weeks. And so I feel like you're a voice from the fog right now. What have you been up to?
Oh my God, what have I been up to? Interesting speaking opportunities. Just came back today from the National Association of Education Procurement and did a pep talk, which was like their version of a TED Talk, competing with two other public speakers, and then the audience got to decide who they went to. And they all chose me. Not really. The other two were fantastic. One was negotiations. The second guy went to prison for a Ponzi scheme, and now he is teaching ethics and traveling the country teaching ethics. It's a brilliant story.
Wow.
Brilliant. And I had to go after this guy, right? He's got the beautiful jumpsuit.
Terrible.
He comes out in handcuffs and a jumpsuit.
Note to self, add handcuffs to your roadshow.
So I threatened, I actually suggested that I was going to now come clean, that I used to be an Olympic swimmer, and let me show you what my outfit was. And I started to take off my jacket, and I scared the audience. So that's what happened.
Stick with the handcuffs.
Yeah, to get back to the handcuffs. So, been to AGB, been to NAAP, and then I'm actually this week going to speak at a trusteeship conference on institutionalizing change. So lots of really fun stuff.
It is really fun stuff. We are coming off of a series of interviews, part of our governance series, which we've done almost unbroken, a couple of special episodes in there, but almost unbroken on this idea of governance. And it sort of leads the question that we're dealing with today. And that question is, how might you summarize, based on our conversations with these great leaders in their own institutions and your work with associations and institutions in the field, how would you sum up what presidents, chancellors, and cabinets are dealing with today? How do you approach that question?
It's a great question. And what's fascinating is, the more those of us who are in this world, both internally and externally, dealing with this, we're beginning to learn the nuance that we have to think differently and talk differently about the different types of institutions. So if we're talking about the large publics, whether it's the research and the comprehensives, the liberal arts is the second category, the community colleges, and the up and rising for-profits, they each have a different trigger point. They each have vulnerabilities. They each have their strengths. And that's, I think, what the fundamental challenge is of thinking about what's the business model going to be. It's really going to be different. I heard a thought leader talk about this, is that where this is going is that each type of institution is going to need the right size to its own market. And I love this. I love that concept. We want to simplify it, but the truth is they're all very different.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that. I think that's a really important thing, and it makes me reflect because my experience is both private and for profit. I'm at a private now, and it's a small private liberal arts, and I love it dearly. But occasionally, I'm left with this feeling like I'm sitting in my room listening to an LP and watching the vinyl spin while everybody else has moved on to Spotify. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And, if you think about, if I just contrast even the large publics and the story that's out there, and I'm working with one in particular that recognizes that they very likely in the next 5 to 10 years are going to be operating as quasi-private institutions, in that in their state, they're preparing for going to zero funding. Now, that they're actually designing and rethinking their budget processes, their distribution of teaching and research around the likelihood that they really have to be self-sufficient and they can't rely on the state. So what does that actually mean from a where they're getting the resources from?
Yeah, certainly a tuition standpoint.
But what's interesting about the large institutions, the publics in particular compared to the liberal arts, typically smaller private ones, is that these larger ones, their goal, they're not looking to shrink their class. Matter of fact, they need to keep their classes and their institutions anywhere between 20 and 50,000 students. We're talking about the really large publics.
Yeah.
So for them, the issue is not selectivity. Yes, they want to have a sort of a higher SAT and GPA students coming in, but the truth is that they can't afford to give up students. So their big issue is retention. So if you think about the large publics, they need to find ways to have kids not transfer out. The statistics are coming out that I think it's close to half the kids don't start or don't finish where they started.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right? So if you think about the dilemma there, if you got a kid coming to your school and they leave after the first year, you've lost 3/4 of your revenue.
Yeah, that's right.
So for the large publics, it's about retention, while the liberal arts, what they're talking about at the senior level, is how do we demonstrate value of the humanities and liberal arts while also really demonstrating a real return on investment. And in this case, I'm not talking about the Amherst or the Williams, but the majority of these, approximately 1,000 private colleges, and I can tell you the Sweetbriar and what the choice that the trustees at Sweetbriar have made is a wake-up call for every institution. Yes, they're unique.
Summarize their choice for those who don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, Sweetbriar, basically, the trustees, with an $84 million endowment, it's a private school, all women's, in a rural area, has chosen that they are going to close up after this year. And all of the kids who are, everything I'm reading is they're doing everything they can to help the senior class get jobs, the undergraduates, freshmen through juniors, transfer and take care of them. But there's a whole group within Sweetbriar that is rightfully saying, we have an $84 million endowment. Can't we find a way to make this still work? And what I think is powerful about the Sweetbriar choice for other institutions is not that others should choose to consider closing, but that they should be having the conversation and then choose to move forward. But this has opened the door to have those kind of conversations. Should we continue on a slow decline, or do we need to tell the truth about where we are? I think that, you could argue it both ways. I think that their trustees have made a bold, but some people think it's reckless. Other people think it was bold. It depends on your view of when it comes to this kind of brutal fact, what do you do about it? And they made that choice. So the liberal arts is looking at the fact that they can't keep raising tuition. There's a perception that you can't get a let's pick a degree like one of those traditional psychology. Although psychology, you could leave and get a certain kind of job in the marketplace. But the typical liberal arts kinds of degrees, there's a perception that you can't get jobs from it.
Yeah.
Or that your debt is going to way exceed your ability to pay it back in some kind of timely way.
Right.
The liberal arts are holding on to, is that they're teaching kids critical thinking. So in one breath, I think leadership in liberal arts absolutely should continue to espouse this. They got to get better at helping people outside of their institutions understand that there really is value, and kids coming from their institutions are well positioned to be able to secure jobs because of what they're learning.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I think that's a good point, but I also think that there is another pressure from the classroom, which is I think the professional degrees are getting much better at teaching critical thinking in addition to. And so I know I can tell you our own curriculum, critical thinking, has become a core deliverable in performance objectives. Like we are measuring our curricula against critical thinking, skill delivery. And so that when you have non-traditional and alternative programs, business programs that are also able to deliver critical thinking, the value in a critical thinking liberal arts degree becomes less.
Well, what's interesting is
it's a more
ways.
challenging case to make.
Absolutely. The business schools, the undergraduate concentrations in business, are integrating a liberal arts critical mindset. The liberal arts institutions are bringing in the career placements, the understanding how to get the fundamentals around business. So both are sort of coming to the middle, recognizing that the others, that they have to take from the other side to remain relevant. Okay?
Yeah.
But I think that there's a challenge for these liberal arts schools that are in these high-priced, middle-tier markets where they're not necessarily drawing from out-of-region growth. There's always going to be those that are not going to have to worry. But that's the conversations at the senior level for the liberal arts schools. The community colleges, I think, are so well-placed right now. With 40% of the close to 20 million students going to community colleges, and with the government also espousing the idea about free community college, there's absolutely a push for these schools to figure out how they're going to keep up with their demand. So that's the conversation at the cabinet level in community college. How do we keep up with this growing demand and demonstrate that we can put kids in our system and have them graduate? Because there's a pretty significant dropout rate in the community college world. And then finally, the fourth sector, which makes up of the 4,000 degree granting institutions, approximately 1,400 institutions that call themselves higher ed learning, but they're for-profit. Their whole focus, I think, and it's going to begin to shift, is as they begin to show that their credentialing, that you went through our system, you have this degree, that these kids can get jobs that are decent or well-paying. As that continues to happen, there's going to be more kids and adults who are going to say, I don't need to go the traditional route. It's parents like me. I went the traditional route. You went to a land-grant institution. You went to the residential art experience, right?
A land-grant institution.
What's so funny about that?
I did. I went to, we've talked about it, my alma mater, University of Colorado Boulder.
That's right.
I also went to a small. I'm one of those close to half that actually went to two undergraduate institutions.
But you had the residential experience, right?
Twice. I was an RA, man. I was a hall director.
Yeah, exactly.
They put me in charge of 500 undergraduates. Are you kidding?
What a mistake.
That was a mistake.
Are those kids? What are they doing today?
Yeah, they should survey them to see if they got good jobs. I'm sure they're higher than average.
So the for-profits, they're going to be increasingly relevant as more and more people are saying we don't need the residential traditional experience. Partly because you got families coming in who, if you have first generation going to college, they don't have that expectation. I did. I want my kid to go through the residential 4-year experience, but that's not everybody's experience. And I think that we need to recognize that there's a place for this for-profit. I think the more important one for those leaders who are trying to produce change in their systems is that the best thing we can be doing is using the for-profits up on our heels as motivation to say, how can we do what we do better, right? So not to put a fear of God into these, your leadership and your institution. But the truth is, if we don't find a way to do what we do better or double down on our mission and know what programs are really relevant to our students, if we don't figure out how to make it more efficient and effective for students to recognize the value of our institutions, these other types of institutions are only going to gain ground. So hopefully for the traditional institutions, they will see they will use this as motivation for change.
I think so, and this for-profit one is one that's this argument is close to my heart. I mean, I have experience in for-profit as a big part of my life, just working in the field, and I think that there is what they have, part of their sale is the job sale, because the education, what they have been able to do, I think, and are doing successfully is changing the discussion of the sort of cultural impact of education, that you don't have to go to school and take time out of your life to go get a degree, to get a job. What they're saying is, you want a job? Let's start you now on evening and weekend classes or online classes in our for-profit program, because all we do is efficiency of delivery. That's what we do. And
but they're not. But they're
still
at the beginning stages of having that kind of public credibility that they offer commensurate, even close to the value of the traditional experience. But it's coming.
Oh,
and it's
I think it is shifting. I think you're playing that one conservative. I think there are more people who actually don't know the difference between traditional ed and non-traditional ed, or profit and nonprofit and for-profit, than you think. I think there is a whole massive segment of this country that just sees school as school as school, and one school lets you do it at nights and online, and they are no different than the other one down the street.
Well, that point of view, Pete, that you have, and I can tell you that many people who are running the traditional institutions do not espouse that that's really happening as fast as you're thinking.
And that is a challenge that they're having. That's the problem, Howard.
That's right. But at the same time, you have to speak to their listening.
Yeah.
Because, if you say the sky is falling, and I'm not suggesting you're saying this, but you go at leaders in traditional institutions with this kind of premise without evidence, it just gets dismissed.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So I think we
good
solved
talk.
it.
I think we did. Let's put this one to bed. What?
Go ahead.
You have more? You have more you want to talk about, or can we wrap this up?
You got more?
No, I want to wrap this up.
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Let's wrap it up. Head over to teibelinc.com. That's where you want to go to find out more about the show. You can subscribe for free in iTunes or your podcatcher of choice, and you can join us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Follow us at Howard Teibel on Twitter, and just search for Teibel Inc. on LinkedIn. You can follow us there and see all the good stuff.
We got some really great upcoming guests, don't we?
We do.
That we can't share yet.
No, of course.
We're sworn
of course
to
not. But I will tell you, we have some great guests that we have already had.
Oh,
if you
my
haven't
gosh.
heard Larry Baker, Dr. Baker from Des Moines University Osteopathic Medical Center. Before him, we had the wonderful Ron Friedman, author of The Best Place to Work. So we've got a lot of great episodes in the can. If you aren't caught up and you're just catching this one on the website, go subscribe. Download some of our past episodes. It's a good thing for you. It's good for your heart.
Exactly.
Your doctor says you should do this. On behalf of Howard Teibel, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week on Navigating Change, the podcast from Teibel Inc.